Hello everyone, it's Mike at Inspiring Harmony with another lesson about leading with grace. If we could master this concept, truly learn to live in the moment, I believe we'd be more contented people, and I believe we would be leading more contented groups. The two stories that support this lesson are just a lot of fun for me, so let's get started. I began playing piano for revival services in Southern Illinois when I was 13 years old. Churches would oftentimes conduct these services lasting anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks. It was a series of nightly evangelistic style services intended to revive the spirit of the congregation. For the first couple of years, I went and did this just for fun, and eventually started charging $10 a night to go out to various churches and play these services. At the same time, when I was in high school, I sang with a men's quartet. Men's quartets were a big deal among those churches, especially the ones singing gospel music, and I enjoyed that so much that I put together a quartet of boys from the local high school, and we would sometimes go out and sing various places as well. So we got invited out to this country church that I knew to be a very charismatic, very lively place. And so the other boys and I were really excited to get to go and sing and play for this particular church. And in fact, we're expecting some fireworks when we got there. This church was known for having speaking in tongues, healings, a lot of dancing in the aisles and on pews, people passing out and fainting. It was supposedly quite a wild place. Looked something like this. So I played a few tunes for the church, and then the quartet got up and sang. And when we got toward the end of the service, it had been really fairly sedate, and I was frankly a little disappointed. But when the minister got up to give the benediction, he said that he thought the Spirit had not yet come into that place. And he thought maybe we should sing a little bit more and see if we could really try and stir things up a little bit. So he called on another man to come forward and be the song leader. This was a big man, 6.5 feet tall, I'd say, not an ounce of fat on him, just solid muscle. And when he came walking down the aisle, I was sitting right on the center aisle. As he walked past, he grabbed me by the arm, picked me up bodily with one hand, and said, "Come on, boy, you play." So I thought, well, I guess that's what I better do. So I went to the front, and they put in front of me on the piano a song I'll never forget called "The City of Gold." If you look at it, it just looks like a straightforward hymn. But, you know, the way these churches tended to want to sing these songs, it required a lot of embellishment. And by the time we had sung all 4 verses and another at least half a dozen choruses, the place was really rocking and rolling, and I was having a great time sitting at the piano, improvising all over the place and making as much as I possibly could of this rather simple hymn tune. What I didn't know is that while the church was singing and people were up dancing and they were shouting and throwing their arms around, some woman had come up and taken her place right behind me. So as I played away, she got closer and closer to the back of my head, and at a certain point, the Spirit came and got her, and she let out a shriek like I have never heard in my life. Scared me to death. So I stopped playing, jumped halfway up off the piano bench, and just as I did, that big old song leader spun around, pointed at me, and said, "Sit down, boy, keep playing." So I thought, well, he's bigger than God, so I probably should just keep playing. So I sat down and continued playing "The City of Gold" for another chorus or two. until it was finally over. And then the minister got up to give the final benediction finally, and said that he thought the Spirit had indeed come into that place, and finally the service was over. What I didn't know until I got out of the building was that the other boys that had come with me just couldn't stop laughing. They were sitting in the back of the church watching what I was going through at the front of the church, and they had a grand time just watching me sweat it out. The truth is, I really wasn't sweating it. I was having a great time. I had a blast. And it was really just because I was living in that moment. Not thinking about anything before, not thinking about anything that would come after. I was just so enthralled with the whole experience of the song leader and the minister and the woman screaming behind my head and the people up on the pews dancing and swaying and passing out, and I was having a great time playing the piano, and I so enjoyed the experience, and it was simply because I was in the moment. My second story about living in the moment concerns a distant cousin who everyone knew as Uncle Joe. Uncle Joe was a gentleman's gentleman in every respect. When we'd be out to dinner somewhere, if I ever said, "Joe, what are you having to drink tonight?" he was always so considerate that he wouldn't have an alcoholic drink unless someone else did. And so his answer always was, "Well, Mike, what are you having?" And if I said, "Well, I think I'll have a glass of wine," he'd say, "Well, then I think I'll have one too." That's just kind of how he was about everything. When he would come to our home for dinner, we'd have a meal together and then afterward retire to the living room where we would play piano duets. Joe would always come in and say, "What would you like to play, Mike?" Because he loved to play duets. He would play music that he knew. I would sit at the other end of the piano bench and try and fill in the gaps wherever I could to create kind of a four hands arrangement of whatever the tune was. And Joe would always say, "Well, what'll it be tonight?" And I'd say, "Whatever you want to play, Joe." And quite often he would say, "Well, how about T for two?" And I'd say, "Sure, Joe, that sounds great. Let's do T for two. What key would you like it in?" And he'd say, "Oh, any key you'd like." And then we'd figure out what key it was going to be. And with no preparation, no forethought, we would just jump in and play together. Here's what it looked and sounded like.
That was good.
How about T for two?
Oh, okay. What key do you like?
I guess it's
Well, you're in A
four
flat.
flats.
Yeah, so you start.
I so enjoyed playing piano duets with Uncle Joe. One Christmas we took Joe to a performance of A Christmas Carol at the Goodman Theater in downtown Chicago. Christmas Carol has been an annual tradition there for more than 40 years. And I remember, in fact, when I was music director of the Chicago Children's Choir in the early 80s, taking a group of children there so that they could sing for patrons before and after the show, as well as at intermission. It was a great experience for all of us, and I always enjoyed going to see that production. So Joe was sitting next to me during this particular performance, and at the end of the first act, I leaned over to Joe and said, "So Joe, how are you enjoying the performance?" And his answer to me was so perfect. He said, "Well, Mike, I can't see anything, and I can't hear anything, but I'm having a great time." And I thought, that is just the essence of living in the moment. I learned so much from Uncle Joe about not worrying about things past or future, not worrying that you can't hear or can't see. Just enjoy where you are. Just enjoy living in the moment. Our society makes it so difficult to live in the moment, don't you think? So much regret about what's already happened and hand-wringing about what's to come. How many times have you been in front of your group and rehashed the same old business over and over again about things that may have already happened, or spent so much time worrying about what's to come without a real plan for moving forward? It just makes so much more sense for us individually and as a group to just learn to live in the moment. Because when you think about it, the past is over. We have less control over the future than we think we have. So you might as well live in the moment because it's really all we have. Thank you again for joining me for this lesson about leading with grace. Please do check out my book, my blog, and my website. And until I see you the next time, buen camino.